Thomas Rubin, CPA, CMA, CMC, CIA, CGFM, CFM, TMI, A-OK. Anyway, he has more than 35 years of public transit experience. He's been a senior executive for major transit agencies as well as an auditor, consultant, and author. He is brought in on many difficult transit projects all across the country. And of course, American Dream Coalition. Very privileged to have him, Thomas Rubin. What's your name again?
Don't ask me the hard questions this early. Well, we're going to be here today talking about a most interesting thing we have going on in the San Francisco Bay Area. Plan Bay Area, much fun. This is a plan to comply with a couple pieces of state legislation in California. SB 375 is a relatively new bill that was designed to enforce compliance with AB 32 of a few years before. In California, we do these regional transportation plans, which are very much like and generally synonymous with the federal long-range transportation plans. Go out 25 years, and it comprehends not only transportation but land use. What we have different about this is that SB 375, for the first time in the Bay Area, imposes some land use requirements. Okay, why? Well, greenhouse gas reduction. Now here are the basic of the specific requirements. In SB 375, right up front in the justification why this bill is needed, without improved land use and transportation policy, California will not be able to achieve the goals of AB 32. Well, AB 32 says that by the year 2020, California has to get back to where it was greenhouse gas emissions in 1990. The draft environmental impact report, which is the California version of an environmental impact statement, says we are going to have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 25 to 35%, and only land use can make this happen. Okay, so I'm an accountant, I'm an auditor. What's the first thing I do? I check the numbers. Well, here's the trends. The blue line is how they kept track through the year 2004. 2000, you see the red line start, which is another way of counting, which by some strange coincidence reports it higher than the old. And the 1990 target was set, of course, on the basis of the old way of doing it, and there's no adjustment because they changed the way they count. But this line is evidently the trend line that is assumed in the EIR. So if it's 25 to 35%, that's where we are right now, according to the people who are developing the plan to comply with this legislation. I had a little problem with the data. Can anybody figure out what my problem was? The good news is we have turned the corner on greenhouse gas emissions. They are going down. We have a significant trend, and it is going to continue to get better at an accelerating rate. This is also true nationally. These are from the federal government. This is what's going on all over this country. And by the way, interestingly enough, the U.S. is about the only place in the world that is actually reducing its greenhouse gas emissions to any significant extent, and we are doing it. Okay. Now, here's our basic question. Those of us who think that the Association of Bay Area Governments and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission might be going a bit overboard. Basically, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Okay. This is about two things. It's about two things, transportation and land use. I'm going to do transportation first because, well, that's what I do for a living. Okay. We have not been doing well in our transportation decisions in the Bay Area. These are a variety of indicators, mainly from MTC. Now, what we see is population going up about 40% over that period. We have the vehicle miles of travel and the number of transit employees both going up over 50%, and transit use down 9%, and per capita and boardings per hour way down, 39 and 41%. Right. These are the people that, based on their record of success, we want to give them more power and more of our money. Here are the financial numbers. Again, we have the costs, and these are all, every dollar value I'm going to give you is constant dollar, constant $1980, just to keep it easy. Everything is going up. Operating expenses are going up, except, of course, passengers are going down. Our expenditures for ride are going way up. Then they have their projection. Then they have their plan. So what I've done is taken their plan and put it on the end of the actual. So we have our record of 9% down over 30 years, but the next 30 years it's going to go way up. The population will be going down, will be going up at a slightly lower rate than before, which is something we'll get to. And the expenditures are going to go up significantly, but actually at a lower rate than they had been previously. And what we also have, of course, is vehicle revenue miles boardings per vehicle revenue mile, and the trips per capita, which were way down by 39%, are going to increase very, very significantly. Okay, that's fun. How? What we have here is more idiocy. Here's the expenditures, again, going up. The expenditure for rider will go down because the boardings, the number of passengers per trip and on trains or buses at any one time is going way up after going down for quite a while. And that means our costs will be a lot lower. And they are doing some really, really interesting things because in many cases, the number of people on board these buses and trains is going to exceed the physical capacity, which unfortunately they don't appear to understand. Okay, this is a bit of a reality check. This shows the record of changes in unlinked passenger trips per capita in the past, and it starts with how many annual trips per capita did you have at the beginning. The reason for this is if you start with a lot of people using transit, everybody's riding it all the time, increasing it significantly is very difficult. If you start with a very low base, then a significant increase is a lot easier to do. This line is the efficient frontier. It takes the people that have the best record. There's no larger agency, no larger urbanized area that did any better. Well, there's San Francisco and San Jose combined, which is what we have in the Bay Area, in the past. And you see an average annual loss of ridership. But somehow we are going to not only be doing much better in the future, we are going to be significantly above the efficient frontier, going where no man or transit district has gone before. Okay. The Bay Area also is really good about bringing its projects in. This is financially constrained. BART, I won't read the details. Let's just say that BART has got an absolutely terrible record of getting things done on time, on budget, and with the ridership expected. The Bay Bridge Eastern Span, which just opened, we needed it because it was susceptible to earthquake damage and could collapse at any time, so we're able to get it in only 24 years at 5 times the cost. And there's been a debate over what we should call it. My proposal is to name it after the two mayors that got it going in this way, which was former Oakland mayor and now again our governor, Jerry Brown, and the other Brown, who it was the mayor of San Francisco, Willie. And my proposal is we name it the Brown Brothers Bridge. Here's another one of my favorites, the Oakland Airport Connector. Now there's a shuttle bus. Takes you to the nearest BART station about 2 miles away. Self-funding. The fares pay for the operations cost and the capital cost of operating. And we are only going to spend, if it comes in on budget, which is doubtful, $500 million to replace it with rail. Why? Well, remember you saw the previous slide, rail to San Francisco International Airport? Well, of course, if you're going to do a rail project to San Francisco International Airport that is an utter failure, then of course you must do one to Oakland Airport. That evidently will be an even bigger failure. And to top it off, we're going to have to at least double the fares. Makes a lot of sense. Central Subway, this is interesting. It started off high, quickly got unbelievably high, and is now at, are you kidding me? We are talking about a light rail line that is this far away from officially being $1 billion a mile for light rail. Did I mention that this was being built? It was authorized in the district of the then Speaker of the House of Representatives. Not that that has anything to do with it. Okay. Then we have SMART. This is Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit. I could go into a lot of details. Let's just say they haven't exactly delivered what they promised the voters, and it can be summed up very, very simply in 2 words. SMART, dumb. Then we have the population projections. The ABAG projection, they're in charge of that end of it, is far higher than any other projection, including Department of Finance, State Department of Finance, Demographic Research Unit, which is the official demographer for the state of California. And this was one that we commissioned ourselves, the opponents commissioned, just so we could have somebody independent look at it. But it is 40% higher than the average of the other 4, and it is as higher from here to here as from there to there. Why? Well, the more population, the more people who will need new residents. The more new residences, the more that can be built where the powers that be say they will be built. Then let's get into a little problem they had on how they figured the greenhouse gas emissions. Has anybody here heard that the United States has adopted a 54.5 mile per gallon standard for all automobiles delivered 2025 or later? Has anybody heard that? Let's have a show of hands. Oh. Well, obviously, you aren't from San Francisco because evidently nobody there has heard about it. They decided that they were going to use an old model from the State Air Quality Board, Air Resources Board. Why is it an old model? Because the new standard was new and they haven't had time to update their model. It will be out shortly, and they, of course, were not going to wait for the new model to do their modeling. So they are using 25 miles per gallon as the standard. Most likely, the mileage will be over 50% higher, which means greenhouse gas emissions per mile will be that much lower, over a third lower. This has several major elements. One of them is that a big contributor of money is the excise tax and sales tax on fuel. If we're using a third less fuel, take a guess what that might mean to this main source of revenue. It also changes a bunch of things around, because if it costs more to drive a mile, you are less likely to drive that mile and take an alternative such as transit, walk, or pick a place to live that's close to where you work. There's one other minor little problem, I mentioned this nice, with the assumption that transit is wonderful for greenhouse gas emissions. The underlying implicit assumption is that transit uses less energy, and energy and greenhouse gas emissions are very, very tightly correlated. The problem is that while for a while they were tracking pretty closely, this is per passenger mile, mind you, not vehicle mile, passenger mile. Transit and automobiles were tracking pretty closely. Once the one-step remove last standard for automobiles went into effect, automobiles took off. Now, buses are getting somewhat better, and other vehicles are getting somewhat better fuel efficiency. The problem is the average load is what's going down. And when you get into the math and you do this for a while, what you find out is the passenger load is the real crucial driver. Not what it costs in terms of fuel or energy to move a vehicle a mile, but how many people are in it. Transit is losing, and losing badly. Okay, now on to land use and housing. This is the key graph. This is right from the EIR, the draft EIR. It was not changed in the final. And you see what I have circled. Well, we have three types of housing classifications: multifamily, mid-rise, high-rise, etc. Attached townhouse, which is duplexes, fourplexes, that type of thing. And then single-family detached. Right now, that's the distribution. Single-family detached is 56%. Now, this says, notice, share of 2010 demand. Okay, this is the projection for the demand in 2040. And what you see is that multifamily will go from 26 to 35, attached from 18 to 26, and the demand in 2040 will drop from 56% to 39%, which means, if you look at this column, that there's 169,000 current Bay Area single-family detached residences that will apparently not be occupied. Well, even MTC and ABAG figured, well, we can't say that. We can't say that. So what they did is say, well, people will occupy them, but only because they couldn't get their first choice, a multifamily. Okay, excuse me. Has anyone at MTC, do you guys all sleep in the office or what? Read what you have there. I could not make this up. I could not make this up. Now let's look. Well, the graph that I added is not there, so I'll skip it. Okay. Sorry, I had added a graph. If anybody wants the most recent version, see me, I'll give you the PowerPoint. What we have here in this column, which says demand is not, which says supply is not supply. That's the intersection of supply and demand. And what impacts the intersection of supply and demand? Price. Now, what is the reality? Do we think that 56% of the people who live in a single-family detached in San Francisco Bay Area, that's everybody who would prefer a single-family detached? Or do we think that because the price of housing in the Bay Area is unbelievably high, that there's a lot of people that would like single-family detached but have to settle? The demand for that is far higher than 56%. But the demand in 2040 is going to drop, not only from the 56%, but something that's probably more in the neighborhood of 70, 75, maybe even 80%, if everybody could get it and money was not a consideration. What we have here is people who obviously either do not understand basic supply and demand, and housing, or more likely, don't really care. Okay. I was going to go through this when I showed another chart, so I'll just skip to this one. What we have here is a problem in that to create those additional units of multifamily and townhouse will require huge subsidies, because the type of housing they're talking about building in the Bay Area is exceedingly expensive to build. There is no money for the subsidies. And furthermore, if what they talk about, namely that the demand for single-family detached will drop, that will mean the price will drop and the property tax will drop. We will have every government in the Bay Area collapsing. And what they're saying is that's where the money will come from to build all these additional housing units. There is nothing in the world that is impossible when it's being paid for with other people's money. Okay, now what will this do? After we make all these wonderful changes, what will this do in terms of land use? And what will that do in terms of greenhouse gases? Well, if you go to the EIR, that will be 6.25% of the total reduction. I'm not saying that the total emissions will go down 6.25% from these changes. I mean of all the changes, which are driven to a very large extent by more efficient vehicles, this will achieve 6.5%. However, they screwed up the calculation in a number of ways. The reality is it's probably not going to be 2%. Do I really need to say it out loud? Okay. Okay. What can I say? This is an absolutely terrible plan. It is put together by either total incompetence or people who started with the answer and then said, what do we need to put on paper to justify it, assuming that nobody is ever going to read this stuff. Okay. It assumes that after decades of transit and transportation in all forms being very poorly managed, somehow all of their wonderful projects are going to come in on schedule, on budget, and carry a lot more people than anything has ever done before in the Bay Area. The financial assumptions are absolutely incredible. I did do a Public Records Act. I found out that their financial plan was put together by the bastard love child of Dr. Pangloss and Pollyanna. There's only one thing that should be done: start over. And when I say start over, I don't mean start over with the same people. I mean throw this out, use it for kindling. That may be its best, or put it in the compost pile. This is useless except in a planning class as an example of what not to do. Plan Bay Area. We don't want it, we don't need it, we can't afford it, and it won't work. Thank you.